The desert stretched forever, golden dunes rolling like waves under the burning sun. The heat was sharp and the air shimmered, blurring the line between reality and mirage. A small group of explorers walked across the sand, each step heavy, each breath dry and painful. Their supplies were almost gone. Their faces were covered with cloth, their eyes hidden behind tinted goggles, but even with protection, the desert seemed ready to swallow them whole. They had come here because of a signal. Weeks earlier, strange readings had been picked up by deep space scanners. At first, it looked like noise, but the signal repeated again and again, always from the same coordinates, deep in the desert where no one lived. Some believed it was a natural phenomenon. Others believed it was the remains of some ancient colony. But a few whispered about something far greater, something left behind long before humans walked the earth. That was why they came. That was why they suffered under this cruel sun. The leader of the team, Captain Elias Ward, marched at the front. He was a tall man with a weathered face and eyes that always scanned the horizon. He was a man who trusted instinct more than machines. Behind him, the rest of the team dragged their feet, scientists, engineers, and one civilian who had joined at the last moment. That civilian was Daniel Cross, a quiet man with no rank, no fame, and no reason to be there except curiosity. For hours they walked in silence until one of the engineers stumbled and shouted. The sand beneath his feet gave way, sliding down into a pit. The others rushed to help, pulling him up, but as the sand shifted, something dark and massive revealed itself below. At first it looked like stone. Then the sun reflected off its surface and they realized it was metal, ancient, weathered, but untouched by rust or time. The group stood frozen. Buried in the dune was a wall, smooth and vast, stretching wider than any building they had ever seen. Strange markings ran across, it etched deep into the surface. Some looked like letters, others like diagrams, none of them human. The explorers' hearts pounded. This was no ruin of Earth. This was something else, something from beyond the stars. Captain Ward gave the order to dig. Hands and tools moved, quickly pushing away the sand. The more they uncovered, the more impossible the discovery became. It was not a wall, it was a hull. The edge curved downward, disappearing back into the sand. This was a ship, a starship so large that dunes had swallowed it for centuries, maybe millennia. Excitement spread through the team. Cameras were set up, samples were taken. They sent messages back to their base, though the signals struggled through the heavy atmosphere. The scientists argued in low voices. Some said it must have crashed long ago. Others said it had landed, on purpose and never left. But no one could answer the biggest question. Why was it here, hidden beneath the sands of Earth? Daniel Cross stood apart from the others. His eyes followed the markings carved into the ship. They were not random. They seemed to flow like language, a story written across metal. Something about them felt familiar, though he knew he had never seen them before. He reached out a hand but stopped when Ward barked a warning. "Do not touch it," the captain said sharply. "We do not know what it is." The team fell into silence again, but the desert itself seemed to hum. The wind blew across the dunes, carrying with it a strange sound, like a whisper, faint and distant. Some brushed it off as imagination. Others exchanged uneasy glances. Night came quickly in the desert. The sun fell behind the rocks, and the sky turned black, filled with countless stars. The team set up camp beside the buried ship. Fires flickered, shadows danced across the dunes, and the explorers whispered about what they had found. One scientist swore the metal was older than any structure known to mankind. Another argued it could not be from this world. Captain Ward listened but said nothing. His eyes kept drifting to the dark surface of the starship, as if he expected it to move. Daniel lay awake, staring at the faint glow of the markings. They seemed brighter now, almost alive in the starlight. His heart raced with a strange feeling, a pull he could not explain. It was as if the ship was waiting, not for machines, not for captains, not for scientists. It was waiting for something else, something simple, something human. As the night deepened, silence took hold of the desert. The wind died. The air grew, still. The team slept uneasily, each haunted by the same thought. This was not just a discovery. This was a secret buried for ages, a secret that had survived time, storms, and silence. And now, after so long, it had been found. But the ship was not silent anymore. Deep within its hull, in chambers untouched for centuries, faint lights flickered. Systems long dead stirred with the smallest pulse. Sensors detected movement outside. A whisper ran through the corridors of the Starship, a whisper in a language no one could yet understand. The desert had given up its secret, and soon it would demand an answer. The night was heavy, and the desert was silent. The explorers slept uneasily in their tents beside the buried Starship. Only Daniel remained awake, lying on his back, staring at the sky. Millions of stars glimmered above him, but his eyes kept returning to the faint glow of the markings on the ship. They pulsed so softly that no one else seemed to notice, but he could not look away. It felt like the ship was breathing, like it was alive. When morning came, the heat struck them once again. Captain Ward called the team together and ordered a closer examination of the hull. They brought scanners, drones, and cutting tools, but nothing worked. The drones lost signal as soon as they approached the surface. The scanners could not read through the material. The cutting torches sparked uselessly against the hull, leaving not even a scratch. The scientists grew restless, arguing in frustration. "This ship is locked from within," one of them muttered. Ward glared at the massive surface. "Then we find a way to open it. There must be an access point." Hours passed. They searched every angle of the exposed hull, but the Starship remained silent, cold, and unyielding. Sweat dripped down their faces. Their hands trembled from exhaustion. Even the most hopeful among them began to lose faith. But Daniel kept watching. He was not trained in engineering or science, yet he felt something the others did not. Whenever he moved closer, the markings glowed a little brighter, like they recognized his presence. At first he thought it was his imagination, but the feeling grew stronger with every step. That night the camp was filled with tension. Supplies were running low. Some of the team wanted to leave and report the discovery. Others wanted to stay until they cracked the mystery. Ward remained firm, his voice hard and steady. "We are not leaving until we open it," he said. Silence fell. No one argued with him, but no one felt hope either. Later, when the others slept, Daniel rose quietly. He walked barefoot through the sand toward the ship. The markings pulsed brighter as he approached, casting faint golden light across his face. He stopped, heart pounding. Something deep inside told him he was not supposed to be here. But another voice, soft, invisible, yet powerful, urged him forward. He placed his hand on the hull. It was warm now, not cold. His lips parted, and without thinking, he spoke a single word. It was not a word he understood. It did not belong to any human language. It rose from his chest like memory, like instinct. The desert shook. A deep hum rumbled through the air. The sand shifted beneath his feet. The hull blazed with light, symbols flaring to life all at once. The glow spread like fire, running across the buried structure, turning night into day. Daniel stumbled back, eyes wide in terror. The others woke instantly. They ran from their tents, shouting in panic. Captain Ward grabbed his weapon and stared at the Starship, his face frozen in disbelief. "What did you do?" he roared. Daniel could not answer. His voice trembled. I spoke." The ship replied. A voice filled the air, not from speakers, not from any machine, but from the very metal itself. It was deep, layered, and alien, echoing like thunder. The words were not English, but somehow they all understood. Signal received. Command recognized. Awaiting directive. The explorers stood in shock. The ship had been dead for centuries, yet now it moved, alive, awake, and it had responded not to their machines, not to their tools, but to Daniel's voice. Panels slid, open along the hull. A massive doorway began to form, sand cascading down as the metal shifted. Inside, faint golden light spilled out, revealing endless corridors that stretched into darkness. Captain Ward's men raised their weapons, fear trembling in their hands. No one had expected this. No one understood why it happened, except Daniel. He knew, though he could not explain it. The ship had been waiting for a voice, his voice. Ward's eyes narrowed. "This is no accident," he said coldly. "Why you? Why does it answer only to you?" Daniel shook his head. "I do not know." But deep in his heart, he felt the weight of truth pressing down. The ship had chosen him. The ground trembled. Again. Lights flared across the horizon as the Starship systems awakened one by one. Ancient engines roared faintly beneath the sand, like beasts stretching after a long sleep. The desert shook with power not felt for ages. The scientists fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the sight. Some whispered in awe, others screamed in fear. Ward gritted his teeth. "This changes everything. If the galaxy learns of this..." He stopped himself. His eyes turned to Daniel, with suspicion and something darker. Envy. The Starship spoke again, its voice deep and commanding. "Primary user detected. Authorization granted. Core systems unlocked." Daniel swallowed hard. The desert stormed with wind, sand swirling into the air as if nature itself was reacting to the awakening. He stood at the edge of the open doorway, his shadow stretching inside. Behind him, the others waited, afraid to move, afraid of what they had found, afraid of what he had become. The silence broke when Ward barked an order. "No one goes in without my command." But Daniel had already taken a step forward. Inside, the ship pulsed with golden light, welcoming him, calling him deeper. The air vibrated with a strange warmth, as if the vessel itself recognized his heartbeat. The others could only watch in shock. A man with no training, no authority, no claim, had spoken, and the Starship had answered. The desert had given them a secret, but it had given Daniel something far greater. It had given him destiny. The golden light spread through the desert like fire in the night. The Starship's hull shone with power, markings glowing brighter than the moon itself. The air hummed with strange energy, making the sand vibrate beneath their boots. Every explorer felt it in their bones, like the heartbeat of something that had not lived for ages was now rising again. Daniel stood at the threshold, his shadow stretched inside the massive doorway. The corridors beyond pulsed with the same golden light, running along walls of smooth alien metal. The glow moved in patterns, like veins carrying blood through the body of a giant. The ship was alive, and it was waiting. Captain Ward's voice broke the silence, sharp and hard. "Nobody moves. This could be dangerous." But the ship ignored Ward. The lights moved in rhythm with Daniel's steps, brightening whenever he lifted his foot and dimming when he stopped. It was as if the entire vessel recognized him, responding only to his presence. The others whispered in fear and awe, their voices trembling. "This should not be possible," one of the scientists muttered. "It reacts as if he belongs to it." Daniel stepped further inside. His heart pounded, his throat dry, but something beyond fear pulled him forward. He could not explain it, but every part of him knew he was supposed to be here. The walls hummed softly, like whispers in a language older than mankind. Behind him, the team hesitated. Captain Ward ordered 2 men to follow, weapons raised. But when they tried to cross the doorway, the walls flared red. A barrier of light snapped across the entrance, blocking them. Only Daniel remained untouched. The ship had chosen, and it had chosen only him. Ward cursed under his breath. "This is wrong. This is all wrong." Inside, Daniel's steps echoed. The corridor stretched endlessly, but the golden light guided him forward. Strange symbols floated across the walls, forming patterns that twisted and changed. They looked alive, shifting like they were speaking directly to him. He could not understand the words, yet he felt their meaning in his chest. The ship was waking. It was glad to see him, Deeper within, massive doors groaned open, releasing a rush of air stale with centuries of silence. The explorers outside heard the noise and shivered. The desert floor trembled as engines buried beneath the sand began to stir. A low, thunderous hum rolled across the dunes, carrying for miles. Daniel entered a vast chamber. It was shaped like a cathedral, tall and endless, with pillars glowing like fire. At its center stood a platform, circular and raised, surrounded by streams of light. Above it hung a sphere suspended in the air, spinning slowly. Inside the sphere were stars, an entire galaxy mapped in perfect detail. He gasped. It was not only a ship. It was a mind. The voice of the Starship thundered again, filling the chamber with sound. Primary user acknowledged. Awakening complete. Systems online. The words shook the air. The golden sphere blazed brighter, and the chamber vibrated with energy. Outside, the explorers fell to their knees as waves of power surged through the desert. Sandstorms erupted. On the horizon, lightning cracking in the distance. The ship's awakening was not quiet. It was violent, like a god tearing free from its grave. Ward shouted to his team, but even he could not hide his fear. This is too much. If this power leaves Earth, the galaxy will come for us. Inside the chamber, Daniel trembled. He was only a man, but the ship treated him as something more. Its systems opened like eyes, one after another. Holograms filled the air, fleets of warships, battles across distant stars, planets burning under its fire. He saw alien armies crumble before weapons beyond imagination. The Starship had once been a destroyer of worlds. Daniel fell to his knees, overwhelmed. His voice shook as he whispered, "Why me?" The ship answered, its tone heavy and final. "You carry the voice that commands, the voice that was promised. We waited. You came." He wanted to deny it. He wanted to run, but he could not. The weight of destiny pressed down, crushing his breath. The chamber's walls shifted, revealing rows of dormant machines, drones, weapons, armored suits, all silent but glowing faintly, waiting for a command. The explorers outside could only watch as light blazed from the windows of the Starship, painting the desert in fire. One of the scientists whispered, "This is not just a ship. This is a fortress, a weapon buried on Earth." Ward clenched his fists. His eyes burned with envy as he watched Daniel standing at the center of it all, chosen by something greater. That power should not belong to him, he muttered. It should belong to humanity. But the ship did not care about Ward's ambition, it cared only about the voice. Daniel rose to his feet, his body trembling, his mind filled with visions. The ship showed him what lay beyond Earth. It showed him empires, councils, and species that had forgotten humanity. It showed him enemies waiting in the dark between stars. And it whispered one final truth into his soul. Awakening complete. The galaxy will hear. They will come. Outside, alarms on alien satellites blinked awake. Far across space, long dormant, signals reached ears that had hoped never to hear them again. Ancient warnings had spoken of this moment, but none believed it would come. Now the ship had awakened, and it had answered only to a human. The desert roared with storm and fire. The team cowered, their voices lost in the wind. Daniel stood at the heart of the chamber, bathed in light, the chosen of a weapon that could shake the stars. And far away, the galaxy turned its eyes toward Earth. The storm raged outside, but inside the Starship, the air was still. The chamber of light glowed like a living sun, golden veins running through walls of alien steel. Daniel stood frozen, his heart hammering as visions of war and fire faded from the holograms around him. The others outside shouted his name, but their voices were muffled, as if the ship allowed him to hear only what it wished. The spinning sphere above the platform pulsed brighter, then fractured into thousands of shards of light. These fragments rearranged themselves into moving shapes. At first they were strange figures, tall and alien, speaking in voices too layered for human ears. Then, as if the ship remembered he was human, the sounds twisted and softened, reshaping into words he could understand. "We are the builders," the voice said. "We left this ship not as a gift, but as a warning." Daniel's throat tightened. A warning? The fragments of light shifted again. They showed planets burning, cities turned to ash, skies torn apart by beams of fire. Armies of countless species fell screaming before the ship's weapons. It had once been a terror across the galaxy. Then the image changed. The builders stood in silence before their own creation. Ashamed, they sealed it, buried it, and swore never to awaken it again. "We placed this vessel in your soil, Earth," the voice continued, "because we feared ourselves. We could not trust our hands to carry it without destruction. We chose a world, untouched, silent, unknown. A world hidden from the great empires. We waited for one voice to awaken it. A voice that carried the fire of resistance." Daniel's breath shook. "Why me? I am no one." The hologram swirled again. This time the fragments formed images of humans, primitive, fragile, small, hunters with stone weapons, villagers defending fire, explorers crossing oceans, soldiers standing against empires greater than themselves. Always weak, always outnumbered, yet always rising, never bowing. "Your kind," the voice said, "was chosen before you even knew the stars. The galaxy forgot you, but we remembered. And so the ship listened century after century, waiting for the sound of your tongue, the weight of your will. Now the voice has come." Daniel staggered back. His hands trembled. The weight of those words pressed against his chest like chains. He wanted to refuse, but the ship would not let him. Outside, Captain Ward and the others watched the ship blaze brighter. They could not see what Daniel saw, but they felt the air vibrate with every word. One scientist whispered in fear, "It is giving him something, knowledge, power." Ward's eyes narrowed. His envy sharpened into something darker. "Then we will take it from him." Inside the chamber, the holograms showed one last vision, not of the past, but of the future. Alien fleets rising from the darkness of space, drawn by the awakening signal. Ships greater than mountains, weapons brighter than suns, and Earth still young, still fragile, standing in their shadow. "They will come," the voice thundered. "They remember the destroyer. They will seek it, they will seek you. What happens next is not their choice, it is yours." Daniel fell to his knees. His head spun with fear. He was just one man. He had no training, no strength to command armies. Yet the ship saw him as a master, as if destiny itself had been waiting only for him to speak. "I cannot," he whispered. The ship's reply was merciless. "You already have." The chamber shook violently. Machinery long buried roared awake. Armored drones crawled from alcoves, their eyes glowing blue. Massive turrets shifted, rising from hidden platforms. The entire ship was no longer asleep. It was alive, aware, preparing. Daniel gripped his head, overwhelmed. The message of the past had become his burden. A ship meant to destroy, buried to save the galaxy, was now his to command. And beyond the horizon, the first alien signals had already been sent. Outside, the team panicked as lightning crashed across the desert. Some begged Ward to leave before the storm swallowed them, but Ward stared at the glowing doorway, his jaw tight, his fists clenched. "He thinks this power belongs to him. But no one man holds power like this. It must belong to all of us, to humanity." His voice was steady, but in his eyes burned greed. Inside, Daniel rose again, bathed in golden light. The holograms faded, leaving silence in the chamber. Yet the words still rang in his mind. The ship was not a gift. It was not a miracle. It was a curse, buried in the bones of the earth, waiting for one man to carry it. And now, the galaxy knew it had awoken. The storm outside grew wilder with every passing minute. Lightning tore across the night sky, and the dunes trembled as if the desert itself feared what had been awakened. The starship pulsed with golden light, a heartbeat that shook the earth. The explorers huddled together in fear, but their eyes never left the glowing doorway. Inside, Daniel stood alone at the center of the chamber, surrounded by ancient power waiting for his command. The ship's voice boomed again, echoing through the corridors. Systems at full capacity, awaiting orders from the primary. The words rang like thunder. Daniel clenched his fists, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. He did not want this. He was not a leader, not a warrior. Yet every flicker of light, every hum of the ship told him that his choice would decide more than his own fate. It would decide the fate of Earth. Captain Ward forced his way forward, his boots digging into the sand as he approached the doorway. His eyes blazed with determination. "Daniel," he shouted, "this is too much for one man. Step away from it. Humanity must control this ship, not you." But when Ward tried to cross the glowing threshold, the barrier of red light snapped, up again, throwing him backward into the sand. The ship had chosen, and no force of will could change that. Inside, Daniel turned toward the platform. The sphere above him shifted once more, now showing the galaxy in real time. Dozens of signals were moving, converging. Alien fleets had already heard the call. They were coming, and soon, Earth would no longer be hidden. The explorers outside panicked. Some shouted for evacuation, others begged Ward to retreat before the enemy arrived. But Ward's obsession only grew darker. "He cannot hold this power alone," he muttered, gripping his weapon. His envy twisted into desperation. Daniel ignored him. His eyes locked on the central chair that rose from the platform. It was sleek, metallic, glowing with the same golden veins as the walls. It was a command throne built for the master of the ship. The voice urged him toward it. "Sit, lead, strike." Daniel shook his head. "If I do this, if I sit, I will bring war to Earth." The voice answered coldly. "War is already coming. The galaxy will not allow you to hold me. They will burn your world to ashes to keep me silent. Only by command will you survive." The chamber vibrated violently, engines roaring deep underground. The desert cracked as sand poured into openings, swallowed by vents that breathed like the lungs of a titan. The ship was preparing to rise. Daniel staggered, torn between terror and destiny. His hands trembled as he reached toward the chair. Memories of his life flashed through his mind. Simple days, ordinary choices. He was no hero. He had never been chosen for anything. Yet here he stood, the focus of a machine built to shape wars across the stars. Behind him, Ward screamed, "Do not do it, you will doom us all." He raised his weapon and fired. The shot never reached. The walls flared, deflecting the bullet into nothing. The ship growled like a beast, and Ward was thrown to the ground by a wave of force. His men rushed to him, but the fear in their eyes was no longer for the ship. It was for Daniel, who stood untouched, bathed in golden light. Daniel's voice cracked as he whispered, "I never asked for this." The ship's reply was final. "Destiny does not ask. Destiny answers." He lowered himself into the chair. The moment his body touched the metal, the entire ship roared alive. The chamber blazed with light so bright it blinded the others outside. The engines ignited, lifting the buried Titan from the sand. The desert screamed as dunes collapsed, storms torn apart by the rising colossus. The starship broke free from its grave, climbing into the night sky like a god reborn. Inside, Daniel felt everything. The ship's systems connected to his mind. He could see through its eyes, hear through its sensors, feel the power of its weapons humming at his fingertips. The galaxy stretched before him like an open map, every star a beating heart. He was no longer just a man. He was commander of a weapon feared across ages. The explorers below fell to their knees, watching the impossible rise above them. Ward stared in silence, rage and awe battling in his chest. The others whispered one word again and again: human. The voice of the ship echoed across the skies, loud enough for worlds beyond to hear. Primary command seated. Human voice accepted. The destroyer has awakened. Far away, across light years, alien fleets received the signal. Fear spread through councils and empires as the warnings of their ancestors became real. The destroyer had risen again, but this time it belonged not to them. It belonged to Earth. Daniel gripped the armrests of the throne, his heart steady now. He was afraid, but inside that fear was a spark of something stronger. He was human, and humanity had always been underestimated. He spoke one command, his voice, clear and unshaken: "Protect Earth." The ship answered with a roar that shook the heavens, and thus began the story the galaxy had feared for centuries. Humanity had been noticed, humanity had been chosen, and humanity would rise.